Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, yeah, we've had a lot of news recently. I haven't done a video for a while, but there's a lot I need to talk about. I haven't talked about, the Nintendo's, Direct. I haven't talked about the PlayStation 5 reveals. But what I want to talk about today, has a lot to do with the recent announcement that Microsoft has bought out Bethesda and its software and all the other companies that they bought with them. Because this is actually, I don't see a lot of people talking about this, and I don't know why, in all honesty. But I feel, one of my biggest faults, I feel, when it comes to gaming is that, I love this industry, with a deep passion. I say it's one of my faults because it ends up making me quite emotionally attached to how the industry moves forwards, and as we know, sometimes moving forwards, doesn't necessarily mean progression. It is one thing I can say about myself and my history with gaming is that my thoughts and beliefs have always been consistent, for the most part, as consistent as can be, and I mean consistent in how I've viewed the industry and everything that has happened within it. Of course, this helps as I've been gaming all my life, and have also worked in gaming retail as well. I've also been to industry events, and all these was during some of the biggest changes the industry has seen. And funny enough, I tweeted the other day on some random post on the Sega Shop Twitter channel, where they asked how old you were when the Dreamcast launched. And I replied, as I've told others many times, that I actually worked in Electronics Boutique, which was a video game store, when the Sega Dreamcast launched in the UK. And, as we know, it was Sega's last console. Then, at the same time, I messaged my friend, who was actually, the manager of the shop at the time, and, also the person who hired me. And he reminded me of the exact date of when I started working at Electronics Boutique, and it happened to be in the month of September of 1997. So in the last few months of that year, I got to see, firsthand the launch of games like Final Fantasy VII, Tomb Raider 2, Diddy Kong Racing, the original Grand Theft Auto, Lilac Wars, and even Crash Bandicoot Bloody 2, which I actually completed at the time, believe it or not. Hell, I even remember my boss telling me off when Tomb Raider 2 launched. When you're working, I was working behind the counter, at the time on the tills and getting the games to customers. The shop was busy, but I was crazy itching to see the new Manor House training section of Tomb Raider 2, all because I loved the first game so much, with the first Tomb Raider, being the game that made me want the Sega Saturn, which I had gotten for the Christmas of 1996. He told me to, concentrate on the customers and not put the game on the TV, but for some crazed reason, I still put the game on, using the actual excuse that a customer wanted to see the game running before they bought it. And someone did actually ask me that, but, it don't matter. But of course, that was a schoolboy error, and I got a good telling off out, at the back of the shop. But, where was I going with this? The point I'm trying to make is that I was there, peak Sony, peak PlayStation 1, deep in the fire of the industry, on the shop floor, witnessing the customer-led fever of the PlayStation 1 and how Sony had already demolished the Sega Saturn by this point. A console, at the time, which was already in that shop's, bagging bins, much to my dismay, as well as, pleasure to be able to keep buying cheap Sega Saturn games. But I could also see the once Titan-like armor of Nintendo in regards to consumers, paying interest, slowly waning, starting to wane on Nintendo. Because cost was a major factor. Of course, the N64 wasn't cheap back then, but taste in the types of games people were getting interested in was quickly changing. Nintendo, with their juggernauts, even juggernaut, still had a strong grasp at the time, and I'll never forget, opening the shop doors on the launch of The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and having mothers and fathers, physically roll under the rising shutters, desperate to get a copy of this game, most likely, for their begging children, for that Christmas, but regardless, the industry was already changing, and I could see it, hammered home even more when I saw people, without a care in the world, completely shun the Sega Dreamcast, more concerned in waiting for the launch of the PlayStation 2, which still wouldn't launch till a whole year, after the Dreamcast, which even, before the PS2 launched, the Dreamcast was already dead, a mere 2 years on the market. Even in that first retail job alone, I knew straight away that the industry had changed, and in my opinion, not for the better. And it all started with a non-gaming company, buying their way into the industry, and of course a deal, going south with a gaming industry giant, as we know that story. I guess you could argue that Nintendo both saved what I love, truly love about gaming, whilst almost also dooming it. Gaming after the PS1 was no longer about nerds. Money had poured in. Gaming had become commercialized. It was no longer about nerds. It had become a casual market, and this, as we know, greatly affected its impact and also its output. But you know what I also remember? I remember walking into Game, which was a rival video game store to Electronics Boutique at the time. I remember walking into Game during 1997, whilst the only 32-bit console I had was a Sega Saturn, and I remember hating the PlayStation 1 when I first saw it, all because I could see people ignoring the Sega Saturn, for this newcomer Sony, who weren't even a gaming company. In my mind, it just wasn't right. Something had gone wrong. But in the UK, most of Sega's financial troubles I didn't know about at the time. I just read my official Sega Saturn magazine and played my Sega Saturn. But still, even when I saw Final Fantasy VII, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and Parappa the Rapper being advertised and demoed in game, I knew I was a gamer. I knew these games weren't coming to the Sega Saturn, and I knew I had to get a PlayStation 1 to play them. I've always followed the games, no matter what. Then after I left Electronics Boutique at the end of 1999. I worked in an internet cafe where I mostly played Diablo 2, Quake 3, and Unreal Tournament online. Whilst also first watching stuff like IGN, being there when we first got to see the absolutely stunning reveal of Metal Gear Solid 2. Which just looked amazing at the time. Not long after that, another friend I used to work with in Electronics Boutique, who actually also worked with me in that internet cafe, told me about a job opportunity in a new independent video game store, and we both managed to get the job. And this was at the time where me and him were already playing on our Game Boy Advances with the likes of F-Zero, which was great. We were playing that link up, and starting this job just as a GameCube was launching. And of course, around this time, Sega had started going third party, massive blow to me, and the original Xbox then jumped onto the scene. Where I remain consistent in my beliefs again is I fervently remember, saying the day both Sega and Nintendo leave the industry is the day I quit gaming. If you knew my friends in real life, then you know how far back my thoughts on this go and how much I haven't changed to this day. But replacing Sega, and I say replacing with quotations, was another in part non-gaming company, or at least one who was far more passionate about PC software than video games themselves. But regardless, I was playing games published by Microsoft long before they joined the console market. But at that time, as I worked in that second game shop, another industry bombshell and another gut punch to my gaming past was that Rareware would be leaving Nintendo and joining Microsoft. But do you know what I remember the most at that time? Were two stories. First, Microsoft bought Rare, believing that they bought Donkey Kong from Nintendo, which just shows their mindset going into that deal. And two, I remember talks of Microsoft buying out Sega, collapsing at the time. Those talks collapsing at the time because Bill Gates was reported to have said that Sega didn't have the software muscle to take on Sony. In here, cemented my personal loathing for Microsoft, entering the gaming market. You see, I suppose it was here, the company already showed their true intent. They didn't want a piece of the gaming market. They didn't want to expand gaming for the love of video games. They simply wanted a console war that would see the essential demise of Nintendo and the demise of Sony, or at least have them reduced to the point where they have virtually no influence over the direction of the industry that Microsoft wanted to take it in. I always see a lot of people say that the original Xbox was a Dreamcast 2. I can understand that, and agree to a certain level of understanding in regards of software from Sega that appeared on that platform in the early years, and as we know, Microsoft made a big game deal with Sega to get all their games on the Xbox. This is a trend that we all see with Sony and Microsoft, throughout the years. But I also disagree. It wasn't. The Xbox wasn't the Dreamcast 2. It was still the Dreamcast. As most of those games that appeared on the Dreamcast were destined, most of the games that appeared on the original Xbox, were destined for the Dreamcast. Having their developments changed last minute as Sega crumbled under their own mistakes and the new Sony-powered marketing direction that the industry was going in, solidified the deal. So it wasn't that these games, were going to be Dreamcast 2 games. No, they were going to be Dreamcast games for the most part. So for me, just based off that alone, from those moments, it's always been a console war. People say the console war ended during the SNES and the Mega Drive era, and I say no. The console war started when two mega corporations entered the industry and fought, not for the progression of gaming, but to expand their own multimedia and software empires. They might have initially started off with some form of desire, but over the years, I've seen it dwindle and go and be replaced by marketed speech. And here we are today, with people seemingly cheering because Microsoft has bought out another games developer and publisher, one of the biggest the industry has had. All that talent now, essentially gone underneath one umbrella. And this is also they can corner the market with the one objective, to get everyone paying them to play video games. This isn't a win for gaming for me. It's a win for the modern consumer. The ones who have been lured into thinking that either Sony or Microsoft are great for gaming, with all they offer. But it's not a win for gaming. That's been made even more evident over the years as we've seen some of the greatest game studios crumble into dust. Closed down or bought out and then closed down as the narrative that Microsoft and Sony set, cornered what people, I suppose, perceive to be the best in gaming. This is what game is all about, right, people? Cornered what people perceive into be the best of gaming into a tight bubble of, I suppose, this works, this makes profit, let's stick with it. Which is why we see so many games and so many similar genres using so much of the same template. What people don't realize, even people who I follow on YouTube, is that when they cheer for such things, like Microsoft buying out another gaming company to put under their so-called wing, is that you have been playing the console wars this whole time. Microsoft and Sony have been playing the console war since they started, stripping down the industry, buying out companies, closing companies, eager to build their own empires and push gaming in a direction that best suits their wallets and their greater needs. Every game company, having games on every game, every game company having games on Game Pass, every third party would have games on Game Pass is a lovely prospect. We like to be able to buy games, in great marketplaces, but having every company under the one umbrella of a single mega corporation, who have already shown their intentions multiple times, but have hidden them, very well over the years, through clever marketing, is for me the death of gaming, the gaming that I know, the gaming that I used to know. Just as we've seen with many industries, whether it's music, if I remember we were talking about a podcast, and Mr. T made a great point about hip hop. Once the money comes in and it becomes commercialized, that the heart of what it once was is gone. So once that money comes in, it's game over. And I've seen gaming slowly die over the decades. It's people could say, you're being melodramatic, but this is what I mean. I'm very much in touch and in love with the industry. Games will still exist, of course, but the fire, will be gone. Just like we saw with, Blizzard Entertainment. I rated Blizzard Entertainment in terms of quality of software up there with Nintendo. They didn't have the same level of output, but in terms of passion and love for what they do and the quality of software that they put out, for the most part, Blizzard were up there, man, up there. But once Activision, bought them out, we could see the Blizzard of the day. Just like we saw with BioWare when EA bought them out. Just like we saw with Psygnosis, after Sony, closed them down. Just like we saw with Lionhead Studios, when Microsoft closed them down. And as we know, this narrative set by Sony and Microsoft, greatly affected the Japanese studios we've known and loved, whose output has either greatly dwindled, got extinct, or has changed to suit the narrative of what gamers perceive to be great today, what gamers perceive to believe that they need today, which is not gaming to me. The console war is still here, and the sad part is that most people don't even realize they are part of it. It's a narrative that started all the way back in 1995 when the PlayStation arrived. As I said, one of my problems is that I love this industry too much, but it's also a relationship of love and hate. One that goes back a long way and persists, even to this day. So in conclusion, how do I feel about Microsoft buying out all these companies? Including, of course, Bethesda, which everyone seems so happy about, for some reason. I personally hate it. Even as much as I personally hate Bethesda developed games. I was a huge fan of Morrowind. But as Bethesda's games continued, they just increasingly got more sloppy and more ridiculous. But even then, that's another narrative that gamers just seem to love. So even as much as I hated Bethesda developed games, and no, that's not including the likes of like id Software and stuff. The industry must not become a monopoly, under the might of a single mega corporation. No matter how much you think they are giving you a good deal, the industry is much too complicated for that, much too beautiful in its or once in its diversity for that. And in the long run, the industry will lose out. We have lost out. We've lost out on a lot since Sony and Microsoft have joined. You can argue that we gained a lot of things, whether we can perceive them to be consumer friendly, based off what we have now. But we have lost a lot, and we're going to continue to lose a lot more than I feel we as gamers and as the industry in as diverse and beautiful as it should be, both not just in games either, in terms of companies. These independent developers who should be able to publish by themselves, who should find a market for the type of games ideas that they want to produce, no matter what the budget. It's in the long run, like I said, the industry will lose out, and so will we. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Like I said, not everyone's going to agree with this. At least, with my thoughts. I haven't totally lied here. If I said studios are closed down, studios are closed down. If I said events have happened, those events have happened. There's plenty of videos out there if you want to look at the history of gaming. All I can say is, from my experience being in gaming all this time, as well as working in retail shops during these key eras, I tell you, when I've worked in video game shops, just now, I've worked when the Sega Saturn, the PlayStation, the N64, and the Dreamcast were on the market. I've worked when the PlayStation 2, the original Xbox, GameCube, Game Boy Advance were on the market. And I've worked in retail when the DS, when the PSP, when the Wii, the 360, and the PS3 were on the market. I've worked in those eras. I've seen what customers say. I've seen what the industry has said. I've been there, so I can only say this from my experience, and also give it from my love for gaming. For all the companies, even the companies I despise as the direction they've gone in. As I always rant about. But yeah, this has gone on long enough. Let me know your thoughts below. I'll be back again soon with another video. I promise I won't leave it this long again. Take care all. Thanks for listening, and peace.